Number 9, you're asked to find the x-intercepts. So in order to find the x-intercepts, the first step is always the same. We know that if it's an x-intercept, the y-coordinate's always 0, so you set this equal to 0. Then from there, you're going to decide on what option you're going to use in order to find those. The three options are, can you factor it and apply zero product property? Are you going to use the isolate x squared method or quadratic formula, which quadratic formula always works, just FYI. So if I'm looking at factoring, I notice that it only has two terms, so it's either GCF or difference of squares. However, 3 and 10 have no common factors, and 3 and 10 are definitely not squares. So factoring fails here. Isolate x squared method only works if you have the first and last term of ax squared plus bx plus c, and we actually do. A x squared would be the 3x squared, and the minus 10 would be our c. So I'm going to choose the isolate x squared method. It's easier than quadratic formula. So for the isolate x squared method, I would try to get the x squared alone by first moving what's not attached to the x squared. So that would be moving this 10 over by adding 10 to both sides. So I get 10 is equal to 3x squared. And then one more step to isolate the x squared. I almost choked there. And that is divide both sides by 3. You can't divide 10 and 3, so just leave it as 10 thirds. And that's equal to x squared. So now that x squared is isolated, we need to get rid of the power of 2 attached to the x. So the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root. So you have to take the square root of both sides. So if you have a fraction, you're really taking the square root of the numerator and the denominator. And don't forget, you always have two solutions whenever you take the square root of a number. So I added that plus or minus the square root of 10 over the square root of 3. However, this is not rationalized yet, so I'm going to have to take this answer and rationalize. So root 10 over root 3, you can't have a root in the denominator. So you open up parentheses and multiply the top and bottom by the denominator, root 3. When you multiply straight across, you get the square root of 30, and root 3 times 3 is really the square root of 9, which is just 3. So 30 has no pairs, so this is actually completely simplified. So my two solutions are plus or minus the square root of 30 over 3.